the more the Fed lends and the longer the Fed lends, the larger tends to be the hole that eventually emerges in the books of the FDIC. And this is back to the accounting standards questions Bill Peirce was talking about. Eventually, we got enough people on this House and Senate banking committees to understand that principle, so we had pretty good support on both sides of the aisle in both houses to push through the reform bill in '91. And the only thing that was a real stinkeroo was this 13.3 amendment. So we reformers said, we'll hold our noses and accept this because we don't think the power will be used. It has not, in fact, been used since 1936. And it's worth paying this price to get the reform bill through. So here we are, $1 trillion later. Most of the Fed's expansion of its balance sheet in the fourth quarter of 2008 occurred under the emergency powers invoked by Section 13.3. And the way 13.3 was invoked in that case in the fall of '08, in the original case, March, Bear Stearns, was itself unusual. There were only 5 governors of the board at the time. One of them was already a holdover because his term had expired, but he's allowed to serve until a successor was appointed. And one of the governors was flying back from a conference in Europe, and he was in the air over the Atlantic Ocean on the Sunday night when the emergency proclamation had to be signed. So the loan was made on a Sunday night to bail out Bear Stearns, and the governor, when he arrived the next day, signed on. But that's how the original 13.3 loan a couple of years ago was made. Then $1 trillion of assets are jammed through the Fed's balance sheet under 13.3. So something intended as an unusual, exigent, extraordinary use of a Fed power became the routine operating procedure. Something that was intended to hold short-term temporary assistance paper, not over 30 days, suddenly became the vehicle for the Fed making what amounts to an equity investment commitment lasting 10 years or longer. So are these powers all properly exercised, do you think? And there's nobody, by the way, I think not even the most die-hard bank advocate, not even the authors of the bill in 1991 would have pushed it forward if you told them, you know, the main use of this thing will be to take pledges of derivatives as opposed to stocks, long-term corporate bonds, and the like. There's no senator that would have voted for that in 1991, and yet here we are. So there's much to be done, and we all know how many political candidates running for office in either party, major party this year, are willing to grapple with these issues or learn enough about them to explain them palatably to the public. The only recent candidate in this state that I know of who could explain this stuff is sitting over there to my left. Okay? So how likely are we to get anyone competent on these financial matters in the fall election in either major party? About as close as will come, I think, is the right spirit in the things that Mr. Ganley is saying in the Republican Party race for the Voinovich seat in the Senate, saying that no bailouts for the banks, and his heart's with the Tea Party and stuff like that. We'll see if he's true to his word. On the other hand, Mr. Portman is a well-educated guy. I think if I could talk to him long enough, he would understand what I was saying, and he might even agree with it. But the question is, would he do anything about it if he did understand it, and if he did agree with it? And that's part of the problem. If you keep electing establishment candidates, especially in the Republican Party, you're not going to get anything other than establishment favoring outcomes. Chris Dodd has yet to stand up and apologize for what he did in 1991. And who is he today? He's the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. The Federal Reserve approved the amendment in 1991 because a Fed representative was in the room when the markup happened. The man who gave that approval is today the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. Okay? And the lawyer who drafted the bill is now the most powerful lawyer in the United States in the private sector. So will there ever be any accountability? Will there be any improvement in the electoral process? It's up to you guys. You have to identify proper candidates. If they want to be taken as serious players in Washington on Capitol Hill, it's not enough. I mean, I like Ganley's sentiments, for example, but it's not enough to say, my heart hates bailouts, I'll never vote for a bailout. You have to be able to articulate reasons like those that Bill Peirce gave you, why bailouts are everywhere and always a bad idea, no matter who's advocating them and no matter who they're for. Can Mr. Ganley do that yet? Is anyone willing to work with him to get him up to speed on that? You all know that there's only one national candidate in the last few years who was sort of up to speed and who could make about as good a case on this as I did for you. Who was that? Yep, Ron Paul. And it's a pity and a shame that the election happened a year too soon. I think if he were running this year, he'd get a lot more traction than he did. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, and we have to play the cards that we have been dealt. But I'm just saying, we get one fair shot this time in the congressional races and in the state governor's race to get things right. And to get things right, you have to have the right candidates, alas. And it's not clear to me yet that we have them. What's the filing deadline for federal office in the state and the party elections? I think it's February 18, something like that. February 18, so you have to find the right guys between now and then. And with that, I'll stop.